Hi, I'm Kelly Vaughn, and welcome to Inside Indy. Today we're going to be talking about the upcoming Region 5 Fair Housing Law and Policy Conference. And I know you're going, what is that and what's that all about? Well, here in the studio to tell us all about it is our Gregory Wilson, who is the Greg Wilson Sr.,
Yes.
who is the Executive Director of Indiana Civil Rights Commission. And then we have Lesley Gordon, who is the Deputy Director of External Affairs for the Indiana Civil Rights Commission. Welcome to Inside Indy.
Thank you.
Hello.
It's great to be here.
Okay, you're gearing up for this big conference.
Oh, yes.
This is going to be pretty huge, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we have all our regional partners, again, under HUD. The different parts of the states are broken up into regions, and our particular regional partners are Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio, Michigan. Those are our partners.
Okay, so they'll be coming from those states into
Yes.
Indianapolis.
Yes.
Okay, for the big day.
Yeah, it
days.
is.
So yeah, it's a 3-day conference. It'll be October 10th through the 12th, and we're focusing on fair housing.
Yes.
And while we have our regional partners who are specific to kind of the industry and do what we do at the Civil Rights Commission, we're welcoming the public, and we're welcoming some industry leaders in developing and banking and some of our housing providers, because it's important that they know the rules and responsibilities under fair housing as well.
Okay, so let's talk about what they can expect to learn, and then we'll focus in more on who the particular groups are. You mentioned a few there, but who we're targeting to, who's this for to attend? Of course, I would think anybody who wants to know about.
Yeah, anybody can attend.
Yeah.
But then also when you look, you have, again, is our lawyers, developers, people interested in banking and those laws pertaining to civil rights in housing and banking.
People getting loans for
Yeah,
homes.
of course. I mean,
Exactly.
and we also too, remember, we're trying to educate people about their rights and understand what are the policies pertaining to their rights. And then also it's kind of twofold. You're educating the public as well as those in those industries.
Okay, so it's important things to know.
Oh,
Because I
it's
think
great.
there's two sides of that in terms of people who want to know about their rights and whether their rights are being violated. And a lot of times we have no clue. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there are the people who may want to know because to avoid breaking the law.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember, a lot of businesses don't know what those laws are, and we want to educate them. You can't always think people do things just because they don't want to do the right thing. So when you have these type of opportunities, then it allows for them to come in and hear about those laws pertaining to civil rights.
So give us a couple of examples in terms of housing discrimination where we as an audience, viewers, might be surprised, like, I didn't know that, or some scenarios like you'd just be shocked to, that's discrimination, or are you kidding? That kind of thing.
Yeah, well, a lot of what we see, and every case is very specific and very different, but in housing, our leading protected class or area of discrimination is disability.
Yes.
So we have persons with disability that go to get a house or apartment or go to a specific area or a home that they go into, and they might need an accommodation or a modification, and that housing provider may not know their responsibilities in engaging them in that conversation and in that process, and that is their right to be able to get those modifications and accommodations that are reasonable.
Wow. So if a person is renting their home, or is this a person who's selling their home, or, because I know we're talking also about people who own apartments, but what about individuals who own property?
Right, so I mean, if you're going to buy a house, a lot of times we see that more in lending, but also in availability of a neighborhood.
Yeah.
You see a lot with neighborhoods that are transitioning, working with realtors or development groups that may advertise only in a certain area or to a certain person, the language that they're using. Or they might go to look at a house, and when they set the appointment up, and once they see who it is, they automatically have an offer on the house, or it's not available. So,
Or if you have children, and you know they find out you have children, and then all of a sudden it is they want to push you in another place, or maybe you need to be closer to the playground, or you need to. That's kind of like pushing, guiding people.
Now, what's the reason typically people push the kids someplace else? What's their reasoning? What's their logic behind that?
I think it's hard to decide. I think it depends on the culture of the neighborhood. We've seen, certain people keep a certain age group in a certain area. It really just depends on a noise factor, if they associate kids with noise or not.
Okay. Yeah.
It does depend. But I think the important thing of it's very nuanced, but in general, you should be able to live where you want to. And so, and if there are barriers to that, we should figure out what those barriers are and if they're lawful.
Yeah, I mean, children have a right to live where they want to live as well. And so we have seen cases where people say, hey, look, we want to put you back here, or we want to put you over here, and you can't do that.
Okay. And in renting a property, because I could see someone's hesitation if a person has 8 children, just the concern for the wear and tear on their property, but you're saying you can't say.
It has still meet the laws. I mean, you got the zoning laws and things like that are still there. You can't say that, and I won't try to be too specific, but it's a 2-bedroom apartment, and
I got you.
You have to.
You can't put 8 kids.
Well, you can't say you can't put 8 kids, but you have to look at what the laws are pertaining to those, as well as those rights of those individuals.
Right. It's got to be reasonable.
Yeah.
And what this conference will detail is really getting into how do you uncover what those reasonable things are, and how do you engage in that conversation, and did you document that happened before you denied a service, or you were told to go somewhere else. And that's what's really important, and that's what we try to train on, is that conversation has to happen.
Right.
Okay.
And again, we're a neutral organization trying to make sure that all people know what their rights are and the laws that protect them.
Okay. So during this 3-day conference, right? So
Yes.
tell us some of the things that people who would be attending, what they might experience. Is there workshops and different?
Yeah, so the theme is 50
Presentations?
years further. This is actually, 2018 is 50 years after the signing of the Federal Fair Housing Act. So that's another reason we're really bringing all of our partners together. We're doing 3 different tracks. So as we said, our partners do what we do at the Civil Rights Agency, enforce civil rights law. So we're bringing some of their staff in so that they can get hands-on training in how to conduct investigations and things to look for. And we're really showcasing some of our best practices that are out and within our region. Then we have a track just for law and policy. So if you're a lawyer, an attorney with one of these agencies, you can get your continuing legal education credits.
Oh, wow.
Again, specific case studies, going over some of those specifics, and really just making sure that they're being efficient and that they're staying up to date on some of those changes. We're partnering with HUD. HUD will have a really great presence there, and that's the U.S.
Yes.
Department of Urban and Housing Development. And they will have instruction. Some of their leadership will be there to tell their direction and some of their policy updates they want to give.
Okay. How many people are you expecting overall? How big is this conference going to be?
300 to 400 people. And here's the thing also too, it allows us too in the industry to be able to network to understand best practices. So that's so important, because even ourselves being the Indiana Civil Rights Commission, there's also smaller agencies in other parts of the state and different cities that also do this for their city or their county. So it's a chance for all of us to come together to look at the best practices, and that's across our region.
Okay. Got a quick question for you. I was listening to NPR the other day, and they had a story on that, and I'm not sure what the cause might be, but that homeownership by African Americans is pretty much what it was in the 1960s. Have you heard the statistic?
Yeah.
And I think they said it had something to do with the housing collapse, that there were great losses during that time. Do you know anything about that? Is that related to discrimination at all, as far as banks go, that kind of thing? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I can't really say, because again, most of our data we collect come in from those who report discrimination, whether it be for the banking industry or from housing. So it's hard to really say how or what impact that has had.
But a lot of our partners, and some of the things that they do study and some of the things that have come out with testing is some of those institutional things, practices, policies, whether it be with the bank or a realtor group, have lingered on the books. And what I like to see and what this conference will showcase are some of those groups that are changing it. And they're changing it in their policies and how that has had an impact on opening up and being inclusive with home ownership or in housing in general.
Okay. And I would think, too, it could be a struggle sometimes for women because oftentimes, whether we don't make as much sometimes or just the perception of, oh, you know, you're going to own a house. You know, it's kind of like when you apply for a job, you get some of that in terms of, are you going to be able to show up because you have a child, that kind of thing. So,
Well, and that's another thing is by attending this kind of conference, even leaders in the community, you'll be able to see kind of who's out there, who maybe you can go to and talk to, the resources that are available. I think that's important for people to know what resources are available and to kind of understand what discrimination looks like in that industry.
Okay. Okay, very good. Well, we appreciate you coming in and letting us know about this big conference that's coming up. If you could go over the dates and times again for me.
Yeah, it'll be a 3-day conference, October 10th through the 12th. It'll be at the Sheridan downtown. Registration is live now, our early bird registration. So visit our website at in.gov/ICRC, and you'll get all the information for our 2018 Region 5 Fair Housing Law and Policy Conference.
Okay.
And just want to make sure they have our number. So please, if you have questions that maybe you can't find on the website, call us 317-232-2600. And we'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, you heard it straight from the Executive Director of the Indiana Civil Rights Commission, Greg Wilson. And then we have Lesley Gordon, who is the Deputy Director of External Affairs. Thanks so much for joining us
Thank you.
Kelly.
on Inside Indy. And we'll have more for you here on Inside Indy after these. And we're back here on Inside Indy and appreciate you watching tonight. I don't know if you knew this or not, but every 98 seconds, someone is sexually assaulted. Imagine that, like between now and the next minute or so, it's happening to someone somewhere in this nation. And of those victims, 1 in 5 is a woman, and 1 in 6 are men. Right, okay. Joining us to explain those statistics and why this is happening is Allie Austin. You are a sexual assault survivor advocate from Families First, right?
Yes. Yep.
Welcome to Inside Indy.
Thank you.
Wow, okay. Tell us, first of all, a little bit about Families First.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're an agency, a mental health agency, so we offer different types of counseling for domestic violence, chemical dependency, and then more recently we've expanded to be a rape crisis center for Marion County. So we've been around for a long time. We're the longest functioning social service agency in the state, so wow. We're pretty proud of that.
Well, thank you for what you do and for your work. Why the expansion as far as sexual assaults go?
Yeah, so it's like a serious life trauma, and so it's always happening like you just said. So the need for support services is very large, and so especially more recently with all the awareness that's going on, there's a lot more discussion of people coming forward and saying that they've been assaulted. And so the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute, they have given us a grant to be able to expand and hire some more people and focus some more attention on helping survivors as well as doing some social change as well.
Wow, so. Social change, that's a that's a powerful 2 words there, yeah. Social change. Yeah. So, explain to people to identify or define sexual assault. What does that encompass?
Yeah, so it is any type of sexual contact that happens without the consent of the victim. So that can be anything from sexual harassment to rape. So it's any type of contact or behavior.
Okay. So, but verbal harassment, say in the workplace, is not considered a sexual assault. But if there was it's the touching. Okay.
Yeah, there's I think especially legally, there's more focus on that trauma.
Okay.
So.
And obviously, we think of rape as being the worst case scenario. And as a sexual assault survivor advocate, tell us what your role is and how you impact the lives of rape victims.
Yeah, so our program, it's called Sexual Assault Survivor Services, so SAS for short. So we are under the umbrella of Families First. So I do direct advocacy services as well as some community engagement pieces. So our crisis center, we offer 24/7 response to Centers of Hope at 4 hospitals. So it's Community North, East, and South, and then St. Francis. So we started that back in May. And so anytime a victim comes into the hospital, they have the opportunity to see a victim advocate. We have a 24-hour crisis line that anybody can call at any time. We have individual counseling, support groups, and then ongoing services, which can include case management if somebody is going through the reporting process and the criminal justice process, helping them kind of guide their way through that. We do a lot of protective orders and just providing resources, and just it really comes down to that emotional support and having somebody hear the words, "I believe you and I'm here for you and you are in control of your healing, and I'm here to help you in whatever way that you need." So it's been very rewarding.
Now, I'm sure a lot of our viewers out there watch Law and Order SVU, and I guess my question: are you our Olivia Benson of Law and Order? I mean, because that show gives so many scenarios of sexual assault, and it really gets into the what a victim goes through, the whole drama of it all in terms of what happens afterwards, not reporting it. Is that pretty much what you see?
So I don't watch SVU, but I know
you should. But good show.
See, sometimes it's those boundaries though, with work, and I'm like, oh, do I want to, am I going to be triggered if I hear something or see something? So, but from what I know, I wish that there was a little bit more understanding that, at the end of the show, I'm sure they solve the crime. So that doesn't happen, unfortunately. The majority of perpetrators aren't held accountable, and the majority of victims will never see justice. That's done to them under the criminal justice system. So if somebody chooses to report, that's just the beginning part of this whole process. So it can be very tricky to understand and sort of navigate on their own.
So why aren't they being solved, prosecuted?
So, and that's, it's like a whole, I can sit here for half an hour and talk about it. So I think there just needs to be a lot of work done from the top down in regard to how law enforcement and the courts respond to reports of sexual assaults, looking at, if there's extra evidence that that they need to have, what does that look like? Because for so many people, they will do the right thing and go to the hospital and get a forensic exam done and things. And unfortunately, things just don't progress enough. I just don't know if there's not enough education yet or sensitivity to sexual assault. There's also not a full understanding of what consent is. So that's where, from my experience, there's been a blurred line. So that's tricky.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to have to marinate on that because what you said, though it made absolute sense, it makes no sense that it is happening that way. Because the question is that the case with homicides? Is that the case with other crimes that are not necessarily sexually related? Are we solving those, but we don't solve this one?
Right, yeah, and it goes back to that there's victim blaming for somebody who was raped, but if someone's house was broken into, they don't blame the victim of that crime. So there's a lot of stigma, and again, a lot of that social change that needs to happen because it is a crime of power and control and not sex. So.
Okay. And they always say that it's a crime of power and control. What are they trying to control?
So, again, these are like, I wish you and I can just sit here for half an hour and talk. So, one of the reasons that people perpetrate sexual assault is that there's a lot of believed gender norms in society. So, boys are raised oftentimes just thinking that, they need to be more aggressive or dominant or, taking care of their female partner, basically just having more control and privilege in society. So that's why the majority of men are perpetrators. There's a lot of different reasons why. But again, that social change needs to happen so we can start educating people, especially youth, about healthy relationships and consent. And so Families First, under the SAS program, we do some prevention work. So we do safe dates, which are classes for teenagers to learn about healthy relationships and consent and communication and things like that. So.
And I'm waiting on the class that teaches the boys.
So there are programs, and I would love to implement those. We're in the very beginning stages of developing the crisis center, but that's absolutely very important.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So your rape crisis center, is there a number that people can call if they need help? They're watching this. I know I've been assaulted. I didn't report it, and I do want the person prosecuted.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so hopefully this is correct. We had business cards printed with the wrong number. So our crisis line is 877-337-SAS, so it's 7277. So anybody can access that at any time. We have a phone number that just the Centers of Hope have at the hospitals where they can call us out. So the people that call the crisis line, they're not necessarily calling the hospital, but the people who pick up, they're trained crisis volunteers, so they can give them information about where to go if they have been sexually assaulted.
Okay, okay. And what can we, as an audience, as a people, do to reduce instances of sexual assault?
Yeah, so again, that social change, so really looking at what can we all do to contribute to a violence-free society. So if you hear like rape jokes or people that are saying derogatory things about women, for example, calling those out, even if you aren't able to change the opinion of whoever that person is, whatever they're saying, that's just speaking to everyone else in the room that this will not be tolerated. Okay. Things like rape jokes, movies and music, there are things that contribute to kind of normalizing sexual violence.
Okay.
So.
We're going to have you back, okay? You're going to be a regular on this show. She's good. Okay, so I appreciate you coming in. We've got to go. I appreciate you coming in. Allie Austin, a sexual assault survivor advocate, Families First. My recommendation, pack some heat. Thank you, Allie, for joining us, and thank you for watching. I'm Kelly Vaughn. This has been Inside Indy. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.